This is a video that I didn't think I would have to make. Recently, a new remake of the movie The Witches came out, and the directors chose to add a limb difference to the Grand High Witch's character in order to make her seem more creepy and scary. And this, for many reasons, has really ignited and hurt and upset folks who have limb differences themselves. It's angering and frustrating, but what I think is the most problematic about the whole thing is that there's so much backlash against folks with limb differences for speaking their truth and for explaining how this representation is bad and how it's actually, hurting and reinforcing negative stereotypes around disability, around bodies that are different. There's a lot of damage been caused, some of which I'm learning now, including the fact that there's a lot of anti-Semitic views in Roald Dahl's writing. And I'm not going to go into the how and the why and all that stuff because that's been covered by hundreds and thousands of folks with limb differences and disabilities all over the world. Please go ahead and do some reading, do some research, look at the hashtag #NotAWitch and listen, read and listen to people's stories and experiences. Please, please, please. That work has been done. I also just really need to mention that, being a witch and identifying as a witch or a warlock or, having, Wicca in your spiritual or religious practice is an absolutely beautiful way of being. I know people who practice Wicca and who identify as witches, so does my partner. And so this whole #NotAWitch hashtag, I think, can do and probably has done some negative damage that was absolutely not intentional, but I think that we really need to address that, like, the depiction that the directors chose for the Grand High Witch in the movie to have a limb difference to make her more evil and creepy, that's very separate from the actual existence and practice of witches in the world today, which is its own separate thing and like I said, really, really beautiful. I really want to apologize for any of that impact that the #NotAWitch hashtag had on folks who identify as witches, because that's not okay. Particularly, witches throughout time have been persecuted, burned, killed, and women have been persecuted over time for this, so it's not something that I take lightly. And not to mention also just the fact that witches in movies are always villainized, they're always villains, they're always made to be bad, and so there's just a lot of history there that's quite problematic that is just important to address. The reason I'm doing this video is because I'm seeing such a lack of empathy and understanding and such a ridiculous amount of backlash against people with limb differences and disabilities who are speaking their truth, who are explaining why this movie has been harmful and are taking us, a move back in time and representation and so many things. But I highly encourage you to go out and listen and hear what people have to say. And if you wanted to learn more about the representation of disability in the media and in movies, there are links below. Please take a look at that. Hollywood and media need to do better. We have made some progress for sure, but there's a lot of room to grow. And I'm also going to link some examples of excellent work in representation down below as well, to kind of show us examples of, where we've come and what we can strive for. So I want to talk about the things that have been really heavy on my heart, not just the backlash that I've been getting for my public posts about my, reactions and feelings and the personal impacts that I felt around the movie. It's the backlash that my friends are receiving, and that anyone that's made a statement about the movie and the kind of hate and trolling and backlash that they've received is just I mean, I should have expected it, I guess, but I didn't. So here we are. So I thought I would just talk to you in story and experience, because that is how I like to learn and feel and think, in story and experience. Learning from others, from their stories and experiences. I find that like facts and quotes are helpful, but they don't always tell me the full story and get into my being and soul. I think that stories and experiences are the agents of change. They move people, they change consciousness, they change ways of being and knowing and understanding. And I can only speak fully and truly from my own experiences. And that's all we can ever do. That's all we can ever do. And I think it's like obscene to me how much negativity and hate and backlash people are throwing at folks who are speaking out against the movie because of the pain it's caused them, or the stigma, etc. The people that are spewing this hate and judgment don't have limb differences. They don't share any kind of experience. There's no empathy. There's no understanding. There's no existing in the other person's shoes for a second and imagining what it might be like. It's just a lot of be quiet. I don't want to hear it. You're not valid. It's just a movie. They didn't mean to cause harm. Shut up. You're such a snowflake. People are offended by anything these days. Be quiet. You don't deserve to be heard. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. I also want to mention that the amazing camaraderie and public action that happened in response to the Witches movie has been so incredible. To be that connected to other folks with limb differences across the world, and to kind of gather together, with this campaign essentially of joy and of uplifting each other and finding strength in each other and supporting one another has been amazing, amazing. And for me, and what I was seeing, it never got to a place of spewing hate at any of the actors in the movie or the company itself. It was just a plea for awareness and a plea to use their platforms to bring awareness to the issues, and honestly to do better, to learn from their mistakes and to do better. It was a calling in. I mean, one of the critiques that I'll mention is that, people are saying, don't tag Anne Hathaway because she's just an actor, she's just doing her job, she's just doing her role, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry, but I call bullshit. That kind of discourse absolutely takes away Anne Hathaway's agency and her own power and voice. She is a smart, awesome human who has the ability to learn and change and grow and speak up when she feels something is wrong. That's kind of part of who she is anyway. And in this instance, she made a mistake because of a lack of awareness. And this is an opportunity for her to learn and change and grow. And I think that she's doing that. And so by saying, she's just an actor, it's just doing her job, blah, 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 that is so not only disrespectful to Anne and her own ability to create change and have a voice, particularly as a woman in Hollywood, it's also such another example of scapegoating and just trying to kind of erase this problem that we are all bringing to light. And this is so common with anything, with the Me Too movement, with Black Lives Matter, with representation in the media. There's just so much gaslighting and so much silencing that it's tiring. It's all the time. Folks in the limb difference community are really diverse. Even saying limb difference community is tricky because it sounds like we're all of the same mind and share the same experience. And that is so, so wrong. I think we can still, use the term limb difference community, but we really need to pay attention to the fact that there's lots of nuance and diversity and differing opinions and different experiences within that. For example, some people have gone to social media to say they're not offended at all by the movie. That's fine. That's great that that's your experience. But that is not the overwhelming experience that I have heard from folks with limb differences, especially from families who have a child with a limb difference and their parents are the ones that are, hearing their children's reactions and having those difficult conversations. One family that I learned about on social media, a child and their mother were watching the movie together and they said, "Why would they do that, Mom?" And then said, "I'm not a witch, Mom." I was chatting with my good friend, Footless Joe, who's another YouTuber with an awesome channel about being a below the knee amputee. And we were having this discussion and I told her that story and I broke down in tears because it was the first time that I realized that kids of an age that are starting to see themselves represented in the media who have a limb difference, if they see a portrayal like this, they could very well think that somebody else with a trait like them, some kids might think, am I a witch? Am I bad? Am I a monster? Some kids might get scared that because their hands look like the Grand High Witch's hands, that they're a witch too, that they are a monster, that they should be feared. So I pictured this child saying to their mom, "I'm not a witch, Mom," in a way that was trying to convince their mom that they're not bad, they're not a monster. Because this movie, which, for kids, movies are very, very true. Like our imaginations as children are so rich and wild and beautiful that you really believe a lot of what's happening in fictional stories. I mean, I did. I can't pretend to know exactly what this child was thinking or what this child was going through. I can just make guesses, but I can speak to something that I went through that feels really similar in my bones from when I was young. When I was in elementary school, I was in an advanced reading course and I was given the book The Chrysalids by John Wyndham to read. And in that book, it's a post-apocalyptic novel, and people that are born with abnormalities like missing a hand or who have 6 toes or who have psychic abilities are ritualistically purged or killed or annihilated. And I remember reading this book with great interest at first, but as I got deeper into it, I began to get really, really scared. I started to feel this sense of isolation and a sense that I was in danger because I was so in that story and connected with the characters, one of which had 6 toes and I have a limb difference. I was right there with her. And so I started to actually believe that the government or someone was out to get me and that I would be purged or put to death. And I remember being terrified with my mom and my mom having to tell me that I was safe and okay and that I wasn't going to die. And our world is different than the world in the book. And I mean, even talking about it now, like when I go back to touch those emotions, there's a sense of tightness and fear in my chest that comes back very quickly. So it tells me how visceral my reaction was. And that was just from a book, let alone a movie where I could actually see the characters on screen. And I think part of why my reaction was so visceral and painful is perhaps I was tapping into a collective unconscious of a history of folks with disability and essentially ritualistic purging of people with disabilities over time through the eugenics movement and forced sterilization, as well as the fact that to this day, all over the world in different places, in North America as well, there are places where folks with disabilities are harassed, beaten, murdered. They are seen to be products of the devil, and in some cases seen to have magical powers and therefore hunted and killed for their body parts. And if you don't know the history of eugenics in the world, and particularly in Canada where I live, I will link some information down below as well. I think it's something that people don't know a lot about, and it's really, really important. And so I think my little body in elementary school was fearing something that is and was actually quite real, where folks with disabilities have actually been systematically purged from society. Another example of that I have spoken about before in a few videos, but I'll mention again right now, is the fact that to this day, doctors around the world, including Canada, if they identify a limb difference on an ultrasound, they will offer the parents an opportunity to abort their baby. Like I said before, I am pro-choice, but if doctors are asking people if they'd like to abort their baby and the only reason is because they found a limb difference, that's like the chrysalids come to life today. Another thing I want to say that is really important is that one of my friends who has a limb difference and has spoken out publicly about the Witches movie and the impact was recently asked to do a news interview about the issue. And because of all of the backlash from people online, on social media, saying, oh, you all are such snowflakes, like, shut up, this is not a problem, all these things, she declined because all of those comments have worked to make her and me feel like we're wrong, that our feelings are not valid, that they don't have a place, that we need to stay quiet and don't rock the boat. So much so that, and I can't fully speak for my friend, of course, but so much so that I have doubted myself. I've had that thought with myself, like, you know, am I just being too sensitive? Or like, is this actually something that I should feel badly about and that I should be quiet about? I've had flickers of those thoughts, like it's working, like this tool of mass silencing that these gaslighters, you know, are using are working. I don't think they're working for good, but they did work momentarily for me, and they did work on my friend in this situation. And that's why I'm making this video, because that is just, it's so gross. Like, these gaslighters and these naysayers, or whatever you want to call them, this backlash, like, it's a silencing tool that works to silence marginalized voices so the status quo doesn't have to change, and so people don't have to empathize or learn or change their old ways of thinking, or understand that there are things in this society that actually work to oppress people or cause pain or increase discrimination, all of these things. It's a lot more work to address that stuff than it is to ignore it and to say, you're just a snowflake, be quiet. And the shitty thing is that it works really, really well. Like, it almost worked on me. But what keeps me going is that, you know, I have to come back to myself and figure out, you know, how do I actually feel? And I have to listen to the thousands of people who are hurting because of this really, really bad choice of representation and who will continue to be hurt because of it. And that if the Not a Witch movement that we have all been a part of for so long helps just one kid, then it's all worth it. If it changes the decisions of one director with one movie, it's worth it. I've had people tell me that my arm is the way that it is because I'm paying for the sins of my parents, that God is punishing me because of something that my parents did. Like, these are real beliefs that people hold. So why on earth would we ever want to do something that would add fuel to that fire? A story that is also really common among people with upper limb differences, and that my friend Sarah had shared with me once, and that I also experience, is not ever wanting to hold a stranger's hand in a circle. Like, there's lots of activities that put people in a circle in school, or, you know, like team building things, whatever, and you're asked to hold hands, and to this day I still get a sick feeling inside my body when I'm asked to hold hands with people beside me, because I think, what if I scare them? What if they get grossed out? What if they say something or react in a way that means that they are uncomfortable or shocked or just don't feel good about it? I do everything in my power to prevent those types of interactions, because I actually feel bad for people. Like, I feel like it's my fault that they feel uncomfortable or grossed out or whatever it is that they feel. I take that upon myself and I think, yep, my fault. I'm sorry about that. So I try to avoid it at all costs. And isn't that messed up? Like, that I would take that on as like a personal, it's just, you know, and just knowing that young people feel that too, like that internalized shame that, you know, they are gross, or that, you know, other kids might be worried that they'll catch it if they touch you, or that you'll scare someone to the point of tears, which has also happened to me. And of course, I'm not saying that every child is gonna feel this, like, but I do know that it's way more often than we care to acknowledge something that happens day to day. I don't really have a good way to kind of wrap up this video because there's not really an ending. This is just something that's really important to me, and I know others too. The fact that there's so many people out there that are trying to silence our voices and tell us that we're too sensitive and too fragile, and that, you know, nothing in the world can be done anymore without offending someone. Like, that's just so backward, because what it does is that completely erases the ways in which the actions of, say, Hollywood, for example, are doing damage and are hurting people in real life situations. And that is extremely damaging. So if you or someone that you loved has ever had that thought of like, ugh, I can't do anything without offending someone, like, I would hope that you wouldn't. But if you did, think about how that is acting to erase the experiences of people who are genuinely hurt, or lives are actually made worse by whatever it is that's happening. Because it's out there, and I think a lot of people just don't want to admit it or don't have the capacity to go there. And that's really hard to acknowledge, I think. Anyway, if you have a limb difference and you have been made to feel silenced or small or not valid or guilty for having a reaction to the Witches movie that has hurt you, please know that you're not alone, and that is exactly what trolls want you to feel. and that your feelings are valid, but that they don't have to be the true you. That you get to trust your emotions, you get to trust your experience, and we get to pull each other out of that black hole that all the naysayers and backlash is kind of like pushing us into. So I'm here to pull you out and say, you don't have to be quiet. Your voice matters. You are right. Your experience matters. You deserve to be heard. I hear you. And in this case, we were heard. There was an apology issued by Warner Brothers and Anne Hathaway. And no, they weren't perfect apologies. No apology is really ever perfect. There was an acknowledgement, and that is definitely a move in the right direction. So we did something and are doing something really incredible together, and I cannot thank you enough for that. So keep it up. You are doing it. And when you're feeling silenced and not heard and not valid, I'd love to be there to help pull you out. I'd love to offer you a hand and pull you out of the muck. There's so much I didn't say, but maybe that's for another video. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to listen to this, and I highly encourage you to read all of the links that I linked below to educate yourself, educate others, pardon me, as I have been doing, because I have a lot to learn, just like the rest of us. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you subscribe to Stump Kitchen on YouTube. You can also support me on Patreon if you want to. We'll see you next time on Stump Kitchen. Bye!